Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golf 360 podcast. Whether you are a tech geek, you're a beginning coach, a top 100 coach, a beginning student, a tour level player, and or anybody in between, I think you're really going to find today's show interesting, enlightening, and any other thing that's going to help you improve your game because although this is a relatively new company on the golf landscape, and a piece of technology that they came up with, it is very quickly revolutionizing how the game is being taught and in a very, very positive and productive way. And my guest today is Reinholds Pirags, and the company he works for and represents is Hack Motion Golf. And Reinhold is the head of the golf division in their product development. And what Hack Motion does is they measure wrist angles throughout the swing. And for some of you who might not be aware, the importance of wrist angles is it controls the club face. And as many of you are aware, or some of you might not be, 80% of a golf ball's initial direction is determined by where the face is pointed. So prior to Hack Motion, there really wasn't an effective way to measure what the wrists and their angles were doing throughout the swing. And they identified that and developed this product. It's a very simple and easy to use product. They have a couple different options, whether you are a avid golfer and you want to get it, or whether you're a coach, again, beginner, top 100, whatever type of coach you are. It is really very simple and easy to use. The data goes right to an app, either on your phone or your pad, and it gives you charts, it gives you trackable data, just about everything that you could possibly think of to really see what needs attention and how to get your game improved. So just a fascinating conversation with somebody who was very, very involved in the product development. We talk, again, about all the things that Hack Motion does, but we also talk about how the company got developed, how they segued from the first identified industry that they wanted to go to and then made the transition into golf. Very interesting and cool conversation that Reinholds and I had. So I think a lot of you across the spectrum of golf are going to really enjoy this one and appreciate it. And if you haven't checked out Hack Motion or heard of it, I highly recommend you do so. And as we always do, we will have the link to their website, their contact info if you want to reach out to them for the products. We'll have a link to their video that describes what Hack Motion is, and of course, all their social media handles. So sit back, relax, get your favorite adult beverage of choice. But first, give a big Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, Hack Motion, Head of Product Development, Mr. Reinholds Pirags. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey everybody, I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right. Happy to be here with Hack Motion and Reinholds Pirags. I say that right?
Yeah, that's
got
correct.
that right. Okay. And you are the, let's say, the golf director for Hack Motion, which has a wide array, but you focus, it seems like, on the golf world. The first thing I want to ask you kind of is about the name. And, hack in the golf world is maybe not the best word to use, but of visions that it generates or with some people. How did that name come about for the golf, for a golf product?
Yeah, so we actually meant it as a hack, as being a shortcut to better golf. So we were actually, when we started, we were thinking about, in general, helping people to learn any type of motion quicker and in a more fun way. So like as a shortcut to become a better, golfer or baseball player. So then in a hacker culture or in a culture where you are more doing things, let's say, just getting as a shortcut to something, then that name came. And it was actually funny that we got so much feedback because we are not native English speakers. We're based in Europe. So we got all these questions about why would I want to be a hacker, on a golf course. And then kind of dawned upon us that it's a kind of funny name, but it has actually worked well because I think it's really memorable and people really remember it well.
So with a very, I'm assuming to come with a product like this, and we'll get into it for those of you that don't know what Hack Motion is. It's a would you call it? Let's say it's a training device.
Yeah, it's people. Like a sensor, golf swing analyzer, and a training tool.
Yeah. So for everyone that might not know, but you're into golf or you're new to the podcast, we're going to get into the whole story and the product and development and what it does and why you should have it and everything else. But I'm assuming you guys have a very strong technical background, and it makes sense where you're talking about hacking into a system or hacking a system to make something more efficient, better, everything else. And didn't fully in the beginning understand the application to golf, but it now that you kind of that was a little maybe speed bump. I guess people could kind of look back and make fun of it, and maybe something funny comes of it as you go forward.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere recommending definitely change it to Tour Motion or something like that, not Hack Motion. But the name, we kept the name, and it's worked well for us.
Cool. Speaking on the golf world, are you follow golf a lot on the tours around the world, in particular the PGA Tour, of what's going on out there, not just from the players' standpoint, who wins or who loses, but some of the things that happen in and around in the game?
Well, we're mostly focused, of course, on the technique of players, but we do of course follow, but I wouldn't say I'm so busy working that I don't have much time to watch TV or read the news. Really, currently at very busy time for the company trying to develop new products for golfers. So I probably hope to have more time to follow the PGA Tour in the future.
Well, I'm sure you're going to follow the Ryder Cup coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, that is for sure. I'll watch that for sure.
Europe would have to be salivating at the fact that the U.S. team doesn't look like they have much chemistry in the way that Europe always seems to, regardless, whoever's on the team just seems to have this gel that a lot of people think is their extra, let's say 13th man. And going in, especially with the Koepka, DeChambeau and the whole thing now, it's just like, God, how are these guys going to pull their shit together to make this exciting? Because you guys have been kicking everybody's ass the last three. I don't even think it's been close.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that European players, even though they might not seem so sometimes high on the rankings, they get this extra advantage. But I think you can never really underestimate the US team. They have such great players. I'm always careful with being overconfident, and it's better to be confident when you actually get the win.
It seems that the Europeans have a very good culture, and that's very important. It seems like in today's world, whether it's a Ryder Cup or a company, and you guys have that. I mean, you wouldn't got to where you are without it. But so I want to get into the product itself. I know people are probably saying, okay, enough with the small talk, but what the hell is Hack Motion? So as golfers play, and anyone who's played for any amount of time, understand that there's ups and downs, and there's challenges and all those things, struggles, and then you succeed. So kind of tell us how you guys came up with the idea for Hack Motion, and basically what is it?
So it's basically a wrist sensor that you wear on your lead wrist, and it measures everything that you're doing with your hands and your wrists throughout the swing. And it provides you precise data on how much you wear, let's say, cupping or wrist at each moment. And it helps you to see what the pros are doing and what you are doing, and basically learn club face control by controlling what your wrists are doing, because you directly control your club face with your hands and your wrists. So, and just to go kind of how we came up with the concept is that one of our founders, Atis, actually has a PhD in electronics. So he did his PhD on exactly these sensor systems and how you can track body movements. And then he wanted to create a system that would be helping to learn any type of motion. And he's actually himself doing snowboarding. So the first idea was, let's build something for snowboarders to learn better movement by getting kind of audio feedback on whether, let's say, you need to turn more or turn your shoulders, and make a full body costume for snowboarders. And that actually didn't go that well because unfortunately snowboarders are not really into buying a lot of and then using this type of coaching. Like, there's just not that much demand for it. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, what really worked well is that golfers, if you look at them, then I would go to my coach, and I would have a chance to work with TrackMan and other type of systems that are costing tens of thousands, and maybe some NBA players don't have access to in a day-to-day kind of when they're working on their technique. Shooting that like average golfer might have, and that golf is super advanced in the technology sphere. And then it was kind of clear that you shouldn't that it's something that there's kind of a niche for that. There's nobody who's doing really good work on specifically what the hands and the wrists are doing. There's like all these full body costumes, but they are very cumbersome to put on. They waste a lot of time, and that's why actually most coaches or players probably don't use them in day-to-day lessons, because you don't want to be spending, a few minutes in the beginning setting up, calibrating, and often the data is quite complicated. And that's why we kind of came up with the idea that, hey, let's just focus on one part of the body, that's the wrist, that is controlling the club face. And that's what also the coaches were saying, that they would be really interested, and there's no easy tool to do it. And then we created the product, and it was actually went really well already from the very beginning. We got really a lot of positive feedback that it's something unique and something that it provides information that the coaches are not able to access normally. And then working more and more with coaches, and more and more players actually started buying it, because they also want to get access to the same type of technology the coaches have, because there are so many players who have their home studios, and they really invest in their game, and they want to be as best as they can be, and practice in the winter, work on their technique, and we've been growing that way. So yeah, it started from just the goal of building something that be helpful to learn any type of motion, and that's our goal. That basically all type of motion learning is moving more and more towards that you are able to measure your motion, and you're able to get quick feedback, and we see that as the future. And golf is a perfect sport to start with, because coaches and players are already very much excited about ability to measure precisely what's happening, get feedback, and they love using it.
What was how did, let me rephrase it. How did you go from or go from maybe a full body capture in snowboarding to focusing on the hands and the wrists, and that's even the forearms to the lesser extent in the golf swing? Like you mentioned that you didn't want to go full body, because that's where most of the golf measurement went, but then that was going to get financially burdened to too many. So what was the process on how you guys selected the hands and the wrist?
It was really looking at what is currently not measured and what's important, and speaking to coaches, like, what would you want to measure, right? And we had a lot of interviews. Like, that's number one thing, that when you're developing product, you should basically just listen to what your customer is saying, what are the pain points, what they want to see. And for us, we just understood that wrist is something that coaches are not able currently to measure, and it's super important. And then that's how we kind of decided that it's also much easier, because of course a full body costume is way more harder to
right. Yeah, I mean, you see, like Tiger Woods, when they were doing the video games, and he'd have the full suit on with all the sensors all over him. Could you imagine putting something like that on a driving range, or
yeah,
somebody
exactly.
comes in for a lesson, and it's this elderly, we'll say, or we'll say experienced person, and they come in and they're maybe don't have the muscle mass that they used to have, and just say, hey, by the way, go put this full bodysuit on with all these sensors, and we're gonna go through your lesson today. It's like, they look at you.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
crazy.
I remember actually myself, my lessons that I went to kind of a camp in Spain, and there was a gear system, and it's amazing what you can measure with it. But every lesson started with, okay, let's put it on. You're doing first, I know how many, like 5-10 minutes, doing everything, setting up, putting everything on. You're taking some swings, and then you're looking at the data. And honestly, the coach gets a lot of value of it, seeing the data, but for the student, it's often very hard, because there's just so many numbers that he doesn't know what exactly to focus on. And I often felt that maybe the lesson, I would benefit more sometimes just having less data and making more swings and seeing how it changes, and like finding what works for me, rather than maybe getting 100 data points during the lesson and not being so clear. So what exactly I achieved during that lesson.
Would you say that the technology in today's world, and in particular the golf world, and your guys being a prime example, that would, and as you alluded to, would show that, okay, it can show you, here's where you are, and here's where you need to go. It's not going to necessarily say, well, do A, B, and C, and you'll get there. But at least it gives you a direction so that you're not just out there trial and error. Um, some coaches might be able to give you that direction. Some players and actually some coaches have the theory that you have to allow the student to develop. You just have to kind of get them going. Would you say that that's a large portion of what hack motion does for people, in particular how the wrists and hands work?
Yeah, actually, the number one thing I think when player puts on hack motion, he just gets awareness of what his wrists are doing and how the club face is responding. That's like number one, that we have this like live 3D view of the hand, and just when a player sees and the coach says, okay, do more of this and that, and he sees how the numbers are changing, he gets awareness of that body part, which honestly, I think most like golf swing things are just automatically what you have. You have this muscle memory, and you don't necessarily think about what your wrists are doing and what the club face is doing. So number one thing is just getting awareness. Okay, this is what I do with the wrist, and this is how club face responds. Just basic theory, like this opens the club face, this closes the club face, and then the coach can say, okay, you have currently, your club face is way too open, and that's why it's so hard for you to get a consistent impact, because you just have to, try to save it and close it at the last, fraction of a second. And then you look at, look at these pro patterns, and what they are doing is they, first of all, don't get to such an open position of the club face, like they control the wrist better, and then they gradually square it, the club face. And I want you to be from, let's say, you give a number, like you're at 50 now, your wrists are extended 50 degrees, and this pro is like 20. And then you can see that, did you manage to get during that lesson closer to that, let's say 20 degrees that the pro is in. And maybe you didn't get all the way there, but you already can see the progress, and you're aware, okay, this is my issue, this is my benchmark for what I need to achieve. And you can, see from lesson to lesson how much you're progressing. So I think that's one of the really key things that coaches and players really like about it.
Yeah, and what happens is when you usually bring out technology to a lesson, and somebody's, you start explaining it to a student, and in their eyes, you can almost see it. They start to gloss over, and that it might be above their head, even though you've broken it down to a very simplistic explanation. And then the response you usually get is, well, I'm a field player. And it's like, okay, what is feel, right? I mean, you would, first of all, you wouldn't be here if your feel was correct. So we know that that's wrong. So let's start there. But the hack motion allows a coach to help a student better understand the feel of where they are, and then the feel that they need to get to. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I know this, like the theory really well, like feel ain't real. And but still, every time I get into the position that I actually need to be, and I know that like the data shows that what I should be doing, if I want to get, it's always feels so weird and awkward. And it's so hard to, make your brain believe in this exaggeration that you need to do to make the change. And you do it like for years, and you still feel so weird doing it. And it's I think the data really doesn't allow you to kind of lie to yourself in the sense that, okay, I'm doing it. The data will show if you're doing it. Like it's same with the path. Sometimes like you might swing out to in, and it just shows that you're still, 10 degrees out to in, and there's no arguing with that, even though you feel that you're already doing it enough. So it just, after each swing, if you get that, let's say, path data from TrackMan, you can just know if you're on the right path or not. But you can just waste, hours and hours in the driving range thinking you're doing right thing, and kind of hitting that shot and feeling maybe even good, like maybe it's even flying okay, but you're still not kind of working on and fixing the thing that you should be fixing, which it might be your path, maybe your face. But it just tells you the truth whether you're on the right path or not.
Do you think that the advancement of technology, in particular as it relates to golf, hack motion, TrackMan, flight scope, force plates, the whole array? I mean, for anyone out there who's going to get mad at me for getting their technological advancement. I'm sorry, it's not a disrespectful. I just can't think of all of them right now. But would you think that with the wear and tear, especially as golfers advance, right, that they go from beginner to decent to weekend hacker to single digit scratch, some that pursue college and then pro, and the amount of time and practice and everything else, and the wear and tear on the body, especially as it's not really, the spine in particular is not really built for the coiling and the torques and everything. Do you think that the technology can allow players to practice and improve without the repetitive motion of trial and error, and that they can have the measurement, they can have the feedback, they can say, okay, here's what I need to do, without just, as you mentioned, going out there thinking they're doing it, then they go play a tournament and they play horrible, and then they got to go back and say, okay, here's what I need to fix, I got to do it more and more and more and more, where the product can help them go right to what they need to, and at least they can develop it faster without wearing themselves out as much. Would you say that might be an ancillary benefit?
Yeah, definitely. And it's just the simple benefit of, catching yourself quicker when you're doing maybe the wrong thing. Like same as might be just filming yourself on the driving range. Like, do I still have that inside takeaway? And it just, you might think you are doing it right, but you're really not. Like, you have to way exaggerate it. And if you can cut that feedback loop to maybe, practicing, then going to another lesson or asking your friend, is this better or not? But like after each swing, you get precise feedback. That's just huge, cutting shorter the feedback loop, and that definitely helps you to also decrease the wear and tear on your body if you don't need to maybe hit that many shots to get to the same goal.
Right. I guess I started equating it to my students the same way my dentist told me, and that I go in there. I said, look, I haven't been to a dentist in 20 years and I don't have a cavity. Why should I see you guys twice a year? Why can't we do once? And he just looked at me very plainly and said, well, it's just maintenance. It's preventative care. You don't want something to fester and get bad. And I think that's a thing I see in golf as well, is that people will only come to you once they're hitting it bad, right? They don't want to come once a month, or, once they're at a level, or that they've achieved a level they want to. They want to come once every quarter or once every 6 months, only when their game has gotten to a point where it's horrendously bad for their level. And it's like, okay, now we've got to dig you out of this hole that you've stuck yourself in, or fill this hole in that you've dug for months and months and months. If you would have come sooner, we could have got you out. And I think that as I've learned more about all the technology the last number of years, it's like, hey, we can do this, and we can pinpoint what's wrong much sooner, so that you don't go down the wrong road and then have to waste all the time getting yourself back on track and then get you going in the right direction. And I was a late comer to the technological world. I mean, maybe I'm just too classic, or maybe I'm too old set in my ways, but I have changed my perspective and opinion on these things as I watched them and interviewed people like Scott Cowks, who's one of your ambassadors, and Martin Chuck and others. It's great stuff, and I just wish more people would come to it, see the light, so to speak. So you talked about how you guys went from snowboarding into the interviewing some coaches to find out where to go in particular. As far as people on your staff or within your company, was there anybody that was either a hand and wrist specialist, maybe from the medical side of the industry, or a biomechanics specialist to say, hey, here's what the science says wrists need to do, but how does that relate to particular individuals, to where if one person who is built a certain way, and then the technology says they need to move this way, that might have a potential to do some damage. And I guess I would reference someone like I think it's biodynamic system that Mike Adams and Terry Rolls and E.A. Tischler use, to where they go through a measurement process on how you should have your lead hand on the club. So should it be neutral? Should it be somewhat strong? Should it be really strong? How should the trail hand go on? And then obviously that's going to affect how the wrists move in the swing. So I guess was there anybody that was giving medical input as far as the functionality of the hands and the wrists and how they move while the product was being developed?
We were actually we checked the basics, but Uh, what we did is we didn't necessarily immediately say how your wrists should be moving. We more created a tool, and they gave it to the experts, who are those coaches like Scott Cowks, who actually a lot of them are really qualified also in how the body moves
Mm-hmm.
and in biomechanics. And then they actually are the ones that create the theory of what the good players are doing and what the poor players are doing, because they have all the experience. So we instead of coming from top down saying, okay, this is how we've talked to a lot of people, and this is how what you should be doing. We like gathered a lot of data, and so what type of patterns we see for more successful players and less successful players, and what the coaches are already teaching, because there's tremendous amount of knowledge out there that the coaches have, and we more based on that. What are our insights about the swing?
Mm-hmm. I think I can't remember who was on the show. If it was Dr. Scott Lynn or Dr. Paul Wood, I can't remember. Maybe it was Doc Sasho, one of them. But we're discussing how, let's say, 10 to 15 years ago, when I think TrackMan was really the first big one to jump on the scene, and it was like, okay, now after 7 to 10 years and longer, they have this enormous amount of data, and then you take the force plates and the hack motion, and as all of you gather this data, I think it was Dr. Scott Lynn. It was like, okay, now we're getting into the realm of application for particular individuals, because I think in the early days, where some of the technology got a bad rap, was some coaches or instructors were just lumping people into general categories that didn't necessarily apply, right? And that might have got some negativity because the people maybe digressed instead of improved. And then they're like, well, that either that coach doesn't know what they're doing, or that technology doesn't work. And maybe that gave a false black eye to, in the beginning. I think obviously the technology has proven its worth. But that was kind of where that question came from. And I would,
we were actually very careful not to give kind of any kind of scores about what's good or what's bad, but initially just provide the data. So we felt that a lot of maybe golf technology also has not succeeded, because it gives you kind of a score like you're 90% perfect, and then you hit a big slice, and or it says like you have to move in this way, but you obviously see that different players still achieve great results by having different patterns. So we just said, okay, we're not kind of starting from the position where we're already telling you exactly what to do, but we're just starting, okay, here's the data, and let's see what you find, what the good and the bad players are doing. And then based on that, we just actually understood really certain parts of the swing that are really more important, and certain wrist metrics that are more important. In this case, this flexion extension and opening and closing the club face. And the club face control is really the big thing that most players can benefit from. And it just naturally evolved by giving all the metrics and seeing what coaches and players find the most valuable, where's the biggest pull. And instead of sitting down and writing everything out what we expect to see and then giving immediately, we spend some time, and then based on that we've seen what are the patterns that the good players doing, and then it's much easier. And we are still not very saying that all the players move in the same way and this is the only way you can move, but we see, okay, these players on average are more successful and better, so you're probably good idea of copying what they are doing. And there's always some kind of exceptions, like Phil Mickelson or something like that would do it differently, but average players, not Phil Mickelson, they don't practice that much, so
right. They don't have his God-given ability either. I mean, exactly. He's an outlier, so, right?
Yeah, you don't say, you can always point to an outlier, and or even let's say Dustin Johnson, they do certain things a certain way and they work, and we can explain what they do, and we can also say what you as an average player who maybe doesn't have that rotational ability and flexibility and strength, what you should be doing, what type of pattern might be more suitable to you.
Yeah, and we'll get into in a little bit the different patterns. And Scott and I talked about a little bit, and I'll let you talk about the technological side as we kind of progress into that segment. But if anybody gets on your website, and of course I'll have it in links in the summary in the description. But you guys have a number of videos on there. And for anybody that wants to learn just the basics of hack motion, it's hackmotion.com. Go check that out. If you're listening to this, you hit pause and go watch some of the videos. But it wants to put people in a range, as you alluded to. You're not going to say, hey, you need to be in this position if you want to hit the ball good. It gives a range, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So what we find is that, so first of all, there are different patterns. So like guys are quite different, like, Dustin Johnson or Henrik Stenson at the top of their swings, they would have, Henrik Stenson be like plus 50 degrees, like kind of cupped or extended. Mm-hmm. And like Dustin Johnson might be, I think, something like 40 something degrees flexed, or also called bowed at the top. But those are different patterns how they swing the club. But what we say is that probably you're much better at kind of having a swing that is more, if you probably can't rotate that as well as Dustin Johnson, like most players can't. And then we say that number one thing that you should be doing is try to control your extension flexion from your address to the top. So don't let it really increase, and keep it in a certain range. And we look at what the tour players that we measured, what range they keep it in, and they keep it, the kind of range usually is, say, from slightly more extended at the top they were at address to a bit more bowed or flexed at the top. Mm-hmm. Actually, clarify, maybe I'm using these terms that may be not clear for everybody. So I'll just take a step back. So what we call most important probably metric is extension or cupping. So that's if you imagine you place your arm flat in front of you and you kind of put the palm upwards, that is extension or cupping of the wrist.
Where the back of the hand is moving closer to the forearm.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's a popular golf term. And then if you move it downwards, then it's called bowing, or we call it flexion. So simple once you know the terminology, and basically most good players are somewhere close to where they were at address, or slightly more bowed or flexed at the top. So they maintain it or slightly close the club face, because when you cup the wrist, it opens the club face, and when you bow it, it closes the club face.
Have you guys found with all the data you collected that the majority of club face to path issues come from a cupped wrist or a bowed? A cupped wrist or an extended wrist?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of, like, it's a tendency that players, they're trying to they maybe can't swing that far back, then they try to hinge the wrists more, which often is actually you think you're going to get more lag if you just really hinge the wrists. But actually it's interesting that the wrist, when you hinge it, it also opens the club face, because mm-hmm. it's anatomically, let's say, coupled. It increases your cupping of the wrist if you hinge it more.
So when can you just, so for the people out there, because you and I are obviously on a video call, and hopefully I can get this onto YouTube, but for those who are listening and maybe driving in their car, can you explain hinging a little bit? Would that be the radial deviation, the up and down?
So that is the radial ulnar deviation. The popular term is hinging or cocking your wrists.
Yes.
But basically, it's, if you move up, it's radial and hinging, and then unhinging or ulnar is downwards. So
as I'm watching you, if for the person is sitting in their car, or maybe they're putting on the green listening, one of them would be where you're let's say you hold, like you're going to shake somebody's hand, and you're going to move your thumb closer to your forearm, right? Mm-hmm. The bone there, that would be one, that would be your hinging, or cocking.
Yeah.
And then if you moved your little finger closer to the underside
Mhm.
of your forearm, that would be the uncocking, right? So
Yeah.
as I'm watching you do it, I'm trying to think of ways for people who can't see you to have a better understanding.
Yeah, exactly. So, and when you try to move it as much as you can upwards, so you trying to load it and get as much lag as you can, then actually you also have a tendency to increase the extension or cupping of the wrist, which opens the club face. So players who really try to, maximize that and load it really much, then they have a often open club face issue. And then what's typically happening is they do a pulling of the hands down to start the swing, and then they just get in a really bad position with an open club face mid downswing, and then they have to try to save it by early extension and swinging out to in, and that results in a typical slice pattern. So that's number one probably thing that we see is just open club face and then trying to square it at the last moment with all kind of compensation and actually losing all the lag. So I think Athletic Motion Golf guys, they made a nice video on YouTube. You can find it with a hack motion sensor explaining how you try to get more lag by hinging this, but you actually lose it midway down because you just your body naturally has to find the way how to square it at the last moment by removing it, and you lose the lag that you try to get so hard.
It's interesting that you guys, as you talk to there, I have the ability to talk to people who are doing all this research and development and creating these things like you guys are. And when you come up with a summary or synopsis of your findings, and as I alluded to, the range in the videos on your website, like, okay, you want it, and you can set that range, can't you? The coaches can set the range for the student. Like you can have a 10-degree variable in your extension deflection.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So I had John Sinclair on the show, and John's a top 100 coach out of Texas, and he's done a lot of research. I think he has 160 tour pros in his database on their wrist positions. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think he had something or said something like the position at the top, that there's a variance of about 120 degrees across the spectrum. So it's amazing that you have world-class players who are across the board from full, like a Freddie Couples, who's at the top and has a full extended wrist. And then, like you said, Dustin Johnson, who's got a 40-degree flex in his wrist. But the thing in common is all of them go into flexion earlier in the downswing, almost from in the transition. And the better players do, and the players who struggle more try to save that coming closer to impact.
Yeah, exactly. So you look at different positions at the top, but when they reach something around P6, shaft parallel before impact, they're actually in a quite similar position, even though they were in a very different position at the top. And they close the club face or square at different maybe moments, some earlier, some later, but they do it in a kind of predictable, consistent way. And usually more consistent players are those that square it earlier, and typical amateurs just square it late, and they have to make so many compensations to and they're nowhere near a good position around P6 or last shaft parallel as the pros are.
Yeah, and it's like you explained to a higher handicap. It's like, look, you have some of the best athletes gravitating towards golf and playing on professional tours. DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson, Koepka. I mean, all these guys could have played very high levels other sports, and eye-hand coordination is phenomenal. And not to leave the ladies out, I'm just not as familiar with the ladies' game to rip off their names, but you tell a high handicapper, like, look, if these players are practicing every day, their eye-hand coordination and their timing is second to none, why would you think that you could play consistent golf when you're trying to time your release, when they get their release set almost as soon as possible as they go from the top to the backswing to halfway down? It's like, and they give you this look like, well, I don't know. And it's like, okay, that's why we have to move in this direction and not that direction. But again, it goes back to you guys are providing that data and illustration. So in your system, so let's talk about the product itself and everything involved, like the process. So speak to what the product is, because it's very simple and easy to use, but then as it integrates to somebody's iPad, that will illustrate what the wrists are doing through the swing, so that the student and the coach can understand it together, so that they have a feedback, they have a visual, and then they have a physical that can help them learn faster.
Yeah, it's actually super simple. It's basically a sensor hardware that you put on your wrist. It's like a wristwatch.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little extra sensor that goes on top of your palm. And the setup is really like putting on a wristwatch. We really work hard on it. It takes like 10 seconds and you're ready to go. So it's not very, very easy. And then you just have a iOS app on your iPhone, iPad, or a Windows computer or tablet. And the moment you turn on the sensor and you have the app open, they automatically pair. And it starts, when you start a session, it automatically starts tracking whatever your wrist is doing. And then you just do a very simple calibration. It's 2 steps. You say what's a flat wrist and what's an extended wrist and how it makes that extension motion. And then when you take a swing, it just immediately captures it. There's a algorithm that tracks throughout, so you don't have to press record and
Mm-hmm.
then press stop. You just same as a launch monitor, you just take a swing and it gets captured, and then you get all the data. And there are different modes that you can look at it. And I think the coolest mode probably that we just released is the one that really just measures immediately what you did with your flexion extension and how much you changed it from position to position, and gives you a range where like let's say most good players would be, and says whether you're inside that range or out, slightly above it or below it. And then you can just work with the feedback, which is audio feedback that you set based on your position. Let's say typically a player might, like a typical player has way too much extension or cupping, right? Let's say his open club face, and you just say, I want 20 degrees less of that. So you just put in that range in the app, and if you get in the correct range, it just plays a sound, and then I'm getting in the right position. And that's really great feedback of getting what's the feel I need to make that correct motion. And then you work with that, take swing after swing, get immediate data, and just see if you're like, am I getting better or not?
So it's like a trifecta of feedback, right? So you got the auditory where it dings or lets you know that you're within your range. It has, then they can see it on the screen, and then you also have it on your hand, so you have some sort of feedback there. So you guys are capturing a lot of ways that people are going to learn and process that information, and so you can check all the boxes and say, yep, doesn't matter how you learn it, we've got you covered.
Yeah, it's the audio feedback is something that it's very easy to just it's again this truth whether you're in that position or not, and it's just very hard like if you to get to the top and know, okay, am I a bit too bowed or a bit too cupped, and it just tells you exactly what you have to do. So
have some of your
really helpful.
Have some of the ambassadors, like the guys who are using this a lot, like Scott and Brian Manziel, I think, is another one that uses it quite a bit. Have there been any feedback where they'll take, say, somebody who's very cupped at the top, and then they'll slowly work them to say that they'll get it 10 degrees closer to flexion, and then once they get there, they can take them maybe another 10 degrees more in flexion? Has there been anyone that has tracked that, to where, let's say, that they've taken somebody from a 40 degrees of extension to a 15 degrees of flexion throughout the swing, where given that they're working with a range, they can continually improve that range until that they get to a desired spot? And then even with your ability to measure, they say, okay, maybe we went too far, we need to go back here because this is when you were hitting it really good.
Yeah, definitely. What coaches do often is you benchmark the player initially, and then you see when he's hitting best. And sometimes actually Scott Caux has mentioned that he sometimes even takes his tour players and just sees, okay, when they're hitting really good, what they're doing with their wrists. And when they're suddenly, let's say a week later, they're struggling, they say, okay, let's put it on and see what are you doing different and how has your release changed. And you can see those slight changes, and players actually like working it with themselves afterwards when they get the feel. Hugh Marr is another great coach in Europe who's coaching like Ryder Cup player, actually, Torbjorn Olesen. And he said that Torbjorn just loves, he gets told what parameters he should have, and he doesn't have to worry about other things. He can just, work with the sensor and on his own, traveling the tour. And the coach can just tell, okay, like work on at the top being, maybe a bit more flat, and you just set the parameters and the sensor gives you feedback. And the progress is going to be really fast, because if you have this continuous loop of feedback, then each shot is bringing you hopefully closer to correct position.
That's interesting that you bring that up. I'm a big documentary guy. I mean, I can't stand watching television with all the crazy shit they have on in the world now, and news in particular. I mean, I went from not watching really any shows. Okay, let me just keep a glimpse on the news to see what's happening in the world. And now it's like that. That's so ridiculously biased, and you're like, okay, this is wasting my time. So I've been a big documentary fan for a long time, and one I watched recently was called In Search of Greatness. It was on Amazon Prime, and it talked to, like, they had Wayne Gretzky, they had Muhammad Ali, and probably Gretzky was on the most, and he spoke to how his development as a player, to where being slight build, not a muscle guy, not the strongest, not the fastest, but developing how not to get his ass kicked, right? Especially in a game like hockey. He developed that from the time he was a kid. And then when he went to the pros, he was 17, and obviously a 17-year-old kid who's playing against men who are 25 to 35. He's got to continue that development on how he can survive. And as I relate that to what you said about Thorborn and his coach, where he's told, okay, here's where you need to get to. Here's a device. Go ahead and play with it. The whole idea that Gretzky was trying to get across was kids in particular, but people in general will learn something if you kind of just give them an idea and say, take this and go with it. And even more so if you say, here's where you need to get to. Go ahead and find your way, right? Like little kids will learn 5 languages. You don't have to teach it to them. But kids are also very inquisitive. They'll go do things. They're not afraid to mess up. I think as we get older, that image of, oh my God, somebody's watching me, I might screw up. It's like, you're not that important. Nobody's watching you that much. But that's very cool how coaches are giving the players and the students, here's where you need to go. Go ahead and play with it. And you will teach yourself and learn much faster than me sitting there on every swing and saying, nope, got to go 2 degrees more this way. Nope, got to go 4 degrees more this way. All that does is lock up their brain, right? At least the experimentation and you guys providing the tool to do so seems to be working some wonders, because the scores are coming down. They're not coming down because guys are just getting lucky or girls are just getting lucky.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of students, actually, they feel it and they get it themselves. After the lesson, they just say, oh, this is awesome. I can just work with it on my own. So once you get the correct feel, then it's really just a matter of repeating it and then continuously getting in that correct range.
Can you speak a little bit to the growth and the, let's say, growing pains from the beginning? So you guys identified that the golfing world, nobody was really measuring the risks. What was it that you guys hit the lottery and that the first prototype you came up with worked perfect, and then you guys just took off from there? Or was there some modification that was needed? And if so, what was it, without maybe giving away any trade secrets to your competitors? I'm not here to steal anything, but what you can speak to, can you just tell a little bit of that story?
Well, obviously we improved and added features. For instance, we started with not that much, not like a full set of data we have currently. We didn't have data for putting, for instance, and then a lot of coaches who were asking, hey, can we use this for putting? And then we added putting. And actually, we just really, when we released it, we really tried to carefully listen to what our users are asking for. So they asked for, number one thing actually was we had the Windows software initially, and then they said, hey, like I want to use it on a driving range. I want to use it on a course outside my studio. So we made the iOS app. And then, like I think 90% of our users are now iOS users, which is obvious. Everybody wants to use mobile. And it's surprising that some of the systems don't have mobile apps yet. And then we added putting. A lot of coaches were asking, hey, like my students are struggling with the yips, and I want to see what their wrists are doing. And David Orr is one coach that was an early adopter. He's done a lot of great education seminars, so he is really big fan of hack motion, understanding how exactly you are controlling also the club face with your changing your wrist angles and what you're doing. And that was a big thing. The big struggles initially also getting the data just from the players. So the coaches that are coaching tour players, they were sending us sometimes anonymous data, just showing, okay, this is my player, this is what we're doing, and then we're just learning, seeing what are the patterns. And then coaches like Scott Cowks, for instance, who was also one of the early adopters, he tried it. Actually, a coach from Austria showed it to him and he was he told me that what convinced him is that he tried a couple times and hit some good shots and some bad shots, and he immediately in the data saw the difference, what's happening in the good swing and the bad swing, and it immediately kind of clicked for him what he's doing and how you can change, let's say, different release and how it is reflected in the data. And that was also very helpful. Him and of course numerous other coaches like Brian Manzella you mentioned, and Martin Chuck and others who were helping to interpret the data and popularize it among players. And we really worked on education for coaches and players, because initially you get the data, but you're not it's not immediately clear what to do with it, like what I should be looking at. And then we started developing those patterns that we identified. So broadly, like amateurs can do a lot of bad things and
Right.
they're different type of faults. But like when we look at the good players, they really fall into certain categories, and seeing what type of release they have. That was really helpful for a lot of coaches who might not maybe spend that much time researching, or maybe even not get access to all those tour players, and they want to learn quickly. So that was a really big thing, and all that information, of course, we made freely available on our website, so people can learn about it. And actually, the education part was the really big thing that, and we're still working on that, because if nobody knows about how to use the product and what the good players are doing, then it's much less interesting. You need to find in the data what are the patterns and present it in a clear way what the good players are doing, so you know what I should be aiming for.
Yeah, it's like, what's the point of having all this data if you can't interpret it and use it in a beneficial way, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually, if you look at the enterprises, then they have a lot of like big data, so you can gather super like tons of data, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's just garbage. You need some way to interpret it, and we were very lucky that we got working with those brilliant coaches, which were actually, they just wanted to work with us. They want, of course, we were not paying anything to them. They just said like, this is amazing. And we organized a PGA show in Orlando, just a seminar, which was a crowded room, and we got all those coaches up there speaking about what they found in the data, what are the different patterns, what they recommend, and just this knowledge sharing and growing the community. That was a huge boost for us. And I think word of mouth is really the almost only way to grow effectively. It's very hard to, let's say, grow in any other way. You just need to have users that are satisfied, and they recommend to other users the product, and they wanna educate other users maybe about even how to use that system, right? They say, hey, I've had success with this one because I've seen this data, and you probably should learn it too. And obviously, a huge boost for us has been that a lot of coaches are making YouTube videos nowadays with instruction material. So it's not that they're trying to maybe just lock up that knowledge, but they want to make it accessible. So the biggest number of people might be interested in that and get access to it, and that has been also a huge boost for us. So any company that's trying to do something new, the big challenge really is just informing the world about why it matters, and getting your users to recommend it to other users.
Yeah, the fact that you guys grew organically, and that it was people wanting to contribute because they believed in what you were doing, and they saw the results, is in the beginning, I would have to assume that it's a little more slow growth, but once it finally catches on, it's exponential, and it's almost like you're trying to catch up or stay current with the amount of growth you're having. It's like, okay, you go from how are we going to get more business to how do we handle all this business that's coming in? So you go from one extreme to the other, and it presents its own challenges unto itself.
Yeah, definitely. And what we're working on, of course, there's also a lot of interest from other sports as well. I guess we'll get to that maybe later. But coaches are looking what are other coaches using, what are other players using, and if you recommend it, then it grows naturally.
You had touched briefly on the amateurs, and they're doing a lot of things in their swing versus the pros, and they're not doing as much. And from what I gathered in my talk with Scott, is you guys have really identified is it two different release patterns for golfers?
There's maybe more than two main. There are two main ones, and there are some, let's say, less popular ones. But yeah, the two ones. One is that more what you'd call it, what Scott calls actually the pattern A, which is more rotation release, which is this turn down, which like players like Tommy Fleetwood or Torbjörn Olesen have. So they release the speed of the club head more with the rotation and less with changes in flexion extension. And that's one type of pattern. And then the other is what's quite becoming modern is let's call it Dustin Johnson pattern, or John Rahm, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa. So getting more flexed at the top, so bowing the wrist, and then releasing more towards extension and having less rotation in the wrist level, less supination.
So let's dive into that a little, because there's a number of coaches that I think listen, or at least I'm told that listen to the show. The release A, what we'll call it, right? The Tommy Fleetwood, I think you guys have Tigers in that category. Would that be more of a kind of holding off of a finish to where the lead wrist does not break down? It stays more flex through impact and beyond?
It does extend, but it doesn't extend as fast, maybe. So it's slightly more, yeah. But it's not. You shouldn't mix it probably with this handle dragging or artificially not completely at all extend. It always does extend afterwards, but it just it's primarily more towards rotation. Like you can see, just the rotation amounts are bigger, and it's extending slower. So it's like you said, but it just to be sure you don't hold off completely without extending.
At some point, it's got to extend. Are you going to do some damage to your lead wrist?
Yeah, and you also lose speed if you hold off too much, I think.
Has there been any identification to what would lead a player towards type A versus type B?
Could you repeat that?
Is there anything that would identify a player as being more prone to be a type A pattern versus a type B pattern?
Yeah, so it's primarily, um, you'd say probably it's more just naturally what you learn to do. I think the pattern B is definitely less popular, and you need to be rotating much more with your body. So if you're an older golfer, then probably that's not really suitable for you if you just physically cannot execute what Dustin Johnson is able to execute. Then you naturally also do more of a pattern A release, or you release the speed more with rotation.
So just so everybody understands, pattern A would be the hands are not going into extension until later in the swing, and there's less body rotation. Is that correct?
Yes. So you release the speed, like you don't get so bowed at the top. So like a typically
more of a neutral position in the lead.
Yeah, exactly. More neutral position at the top, and then you release the speed not so much, let's say, towards extension, but you release it more with what you call supination of the lead hand. So you more rotate. So
I think like a knuckles down, I think Scott referred.
Yeah, exactly. Like
old school, like a Johnny Miller pattern release. Yeah,
that's a better phrasing of that.
Does that tend, because obviously Tiger is who he is, and he's one of the best iron player probably in history. Tommy Fleetwood's obviously a phenomenal iron player and ball striker. Do you guys see, as you collect this data, that one pattern leads to better ball striking, one might lead to something else, or is it no? It's too finite, or there's nothing that stands out to say, well, if you do this one, you're going to hit the ball more consistent or better, or be like one might be more consistent as a whole, one might be streakier, but the averages come out to something similar.
I think Scott in the previous podcast he put it interestingly about the short game, that some players who have more this pattern B might struggle with the short game a bit because they don't control the loft that well of the club. So if you imagine that if you are flexing and extending the wrist, then your loft also changes more. And for it's harder maybe to be a good wedge player if you have too much movement in that dimension. And I think he mentioned also Victor Hovland as a player who struggled a bit with maybe some of his short game shots earlier, and he needed adaptation that might be caused by that pattern as well of how his wrists move and how then the club face moves.
It'd be very interesting to see DJ's numbers, because how he developed his wedge game to world class, and then he went on that tear, especially in being a type B pattern where he's flexed, but he still hits phenomenal wedges on distance and distance control. But as you alluded to, is he gets around the green for as phenomenal as all the other parts of his game are. Let's say he's in the top X% in the world in driving and irons and wedge play. His chipping around the greens would not be, I would assume, not to that level, because as you mentioned, when you have a bowed or flexed lead wrist, it's much harder to control trajectory.
Yeah. So, but definitely, there's it's very hard to make these big generalizations about there's so many players, but yeah, those are things that coaches have noticed. But yeah, you can definitely be a great short game player also with pattern B. But that's an interesting and also reasoning why it can be caused by what your wrists are doing actually.
So what were some of maybe the challenges and or successes as the product was being developed that you guys maybe didn't know, and it was just new because it was something new and you were pioneers in this section of the industry? What were some of the things that came up that you were unaware of, but then you eventually overcame?
Probably the big thing is about what we expected, that it will be much clearer about what's good and what's bad immediately, that there's always this hope for some kind of gold standard that you'll find and that will fit all the players. And you really, like with the hindsight, that it's not there, that not all the players are doing the same things, but there's maybe a bit more hope initially that we'll just find this one magic thing, or why a lot of golf products, when you just try to perfectly say that everybody should do exactly that one thing, it fails. But when you understand that there are these patterns, and then you identify the pattern, and then you do the right thing for that pattern, then that makes sense. And it seems quite simple, but it's maybe initially we didn't really expect that would be that way. And now let's say we're talking about in baseball with teams and major league teams, and they're also asking like immediately, what's the right way, what you've identified. And it's also with baseball players, like I'm no expert in the baseball swing, but it's clear that they're also doing different things, and it's not one thing. And a lot of coaches are just also making YouTube videos or arguing that there's just this one thing that they've discovered that is the key to success, and that there are actually several of those things, and there are several patterns, and then you identify what's the pattern and the matchup, and then you implement that thing, then it will work. But if you just try to put everybody in the same box, for sure, then you're not going to be successful, and you're actually going to confuse people.
That's what I think were the mounds of technology and the data that all you guys are compiling. And now that, not even now, but you've already gone there, where things are becoming more specialized per individual and matching up on how that person moves. They're predetermined to move based off their physical structure. And now you're able to say, hey, here's what you are. Here's what you've been trying to do and why it may be wrong. I think if you try this, or if you do this, then you're going to see the results that you've been looking for. And with the ability to measure and show them, no, you didn't do it enough. You need to do it X amount more. And okay, you got it. And look at the result on that one. It is pretty damn close to what you wanted, if not spot on. I think that's the biggest part of the technological advancement, and where it's going now is it's specialized, as you just said. And people are starting to see the results much faster. Was there anything that surprised you guys as you were going along in the learning curve of your business?
There's a lot of surprises for sure. Thinking what are the most fun ones to share. I think. Yeah, probably the fact that how many coaches are ready to, when you, if you deliver value, that people want to promote you and say good things about you. That's definitely a pleasant surprise, because you're thinking about what's your strategy of should I be sitting down and just filming all the videos myself about how to use it, and you maybe don't imagine that, hey, if you just put it in the hands of the right people, they're gonna help you to explain the benefits of the product and the data, and you don't actually need to invest that much. Like, we're not growing just because we are pouring some kind of venture capital money in the company, and buying ambassadors, like you don't just pay tons of money to tour players to be on the face of your front page, but you're going more this grassroots, if maybe you can call it, and letting people speak about you and growing through referrals. That's definitely has been a pleasant surprise, and definitely go like a great strategy for growth.
Well, yeah, and it gives much more credibility if you have somebody who's doing it um, because they believe in what you guys are doing and they believe in the product and they see the results, as opposed to you paying somebody to say, "Hey, say these great things about us," even if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. We're going to pay you to make us look good. And I'm obviously in today's world, credibility and trustworthiness is something that's lacking. I think in as far as this, not to get off on a political rant, but the leadership is lacking in that no one believes in the trust of what they're doing anymore. And you guys are doing, I think, it the correct way. Uh, Again, I think it's a harder way in the beginning. Is you might be able to speak on where it's like, okay, we're going to do this the right way, even if it's not the easiest road to take, but we want to do it right because we believe in what we're doing. And then you get more people that come to you, like these coaches who say, yeah, what they are doing is working, and let me help you guys because I think it helps everybody else. I think it's a phenomenal way to do something. I think some of the best companies in history are built that way, Apple being one of them. People wanted to go work for Apple. It wasn't like they had to recruit people. And people seem to be doing the same with you guys, which is again a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's definitely, and you can't really fake it. Like you have to deliver the value to get those people to tell good things about you.
Right. What were some of the things that you guys might have been sure of when you started that now you look back and say, yeah, that really changed our mind? Was there anything?
Mm, I'd say maybe we were slightly surprised about. We expected that everybody will know immediately what good data looks like and what bad data looks like. But obviously, if it's the first time you see the data, you don't know what's good and what's bad. So we initially maybe thought like somebody will just look at and say, "Hey, 20 degrees, that's good." But obviously, insight, that nobody had seen that and nobody could tell you. So that was maybe slightly surprising. And then going into new sports, like let's say we would go in baseball, we shouldn't expect that now all the teams are going to be immediately clear on what they need to do. They first need to do the research. They need to measure their players and find out those patterns. And it takes a bit of time. It takes several years. But then you actually get to the right answers rather than maybe trying to get, like, let's say, quick growth and say, okay, let's assume that 20 degrees is what everything needs to be, and let's just push out the message, because then you actually gonna find out that it's actually not the range. There's several patterns, and for each of them you have that range that you need to get, and then it's much harder because you already out there with information that is false, but you try to maybe grow quicker by cutting corners, and that doesn't really work.
No, and as I learn more about the culture and the mantra of your company, I guess with the podcast, I got started with this. Everybody said, "What the hell are you going to do a podcast for? You got enough things that you're doing." I said, "Well, one is through my career, whether it was coaching or teaching and playing, or early on working at golf clubs, I got to meet a lot of very interesting people who had some very interesting stories or did very interesting things, even if they weren't very well known." Um, and now as I go along with it, the whole idea is to put information out there that's either going to help somebody's game, uh, bring someone that might not be as well known, maybe to the golfing public as they are to the coaching industry. I think you guys have crossed that just coaching, and you're out there now with golfers in general. But you guys helped me out a lot in that you shared numerous points of my show with Scott on, and I didn't count, but I know I got a lot of new followers because of that. So what I'm getting at is I thought of growing the show organically. I'm going to put this out there. The idea is to help people. Hopefully it does, and then that will just spawn more people to like it. So I think we have that connection. And I was very, very grateful and appreciative that you guys shared that show so much and got me so many more followers and subscribers. I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, I think that it's really about, let's say, also Scott goes on your show and he shares great information, and and he doesn't ask anything for it. That he just really, those people actually who have that knowledge and want to share it, they kind of do it for free often, and you can't really say, if somebody goes to you and says, yeah, I'll go on your show and you'll pay me X amount for that, it's probably not also going to be that great information. It's like, if you're of course it's fine if you have information that you feel is like intellectual property, but nowadays, like, the fact that you can share information freely and it naturally grows and people are looking for that information, it just really helps your also your company or yourself, if you put out that information out there, rather than trying to kind of have this more approach of it's locked up and I'm not going to tell to anybody.
Yeah, pay us X amount per month on a subscription, and we'll slowly drip out our newest and latest and greatest. It's like, hey, we really want to help. And anybody, again, that goes to your website, and it's hackmotion.com. Once they start scrolling through and reading it and watching the videos, it's obvious that you guys are looking first and foremost to help people play better, to hit it better, to have more fun, all those things wrapped up in one. At least to me it was. Maybe to somebody else it might not be, but maybe they're not for Hack Motion either. And maybe they're not for this podcast. But the people who do, that appreciate quality products, the idea that we want to help you improve, that they're going to gravitate towards that, and they're really going to appreciate what you guys are doing. Some of the, we allude to some of the names, and anyone that goes on your website can see all the coaches that are, I guess you call them ambassadors. Is that a fair?
You can call them, yeah, users. Like our users are our ambassadors, but of course some of them are much more noticeable than others. Those who are working more on educating other coaches. So yeah, we can call them ambassadors.
What would, so you have across Europe and the US, you have a number of very, very respected and knowledgeable coaches. You guys have gone from the development to the introductory stage to the growth stage. And so what would you guys see as your biggest challenge now in going forward?
Well, what we actually now are doing, we're working on making the product much easier to use for everyday golfers. So it started as this sensor that gives you raw data. Then we are finding the ranges and the patterns. And now we're trying to make special modes and training modes specifically for players. We actually just released some of them, just focus on one metric and remove all the other data, because like too much data can be actually confusing. Actually, that's one of the lessons. If you just get all the data, you don't know what exactly to focus on. So making really great user experience, just that after each swing, you get exactly the right data, you understand exactly what it means and what you should be the next thing, what you should change. And that's something that, of course, allow us to be used by more players. Let's say currently, if you buy it, you need to, sit down, think, okay, this is pattern. I need to be hitting it this way. And now with these new modes that we're releasing, it becomes much easier. But of course, the challenge there is that you continuously need to be improving it. The job is never done. So you continuously learning, okay, what are the challenges that we still need? Well, what type of education materials we need to create? That's probably number one challenge for us currently in golf.
Yeah, I would have to think that the model for that would be Amazon, in that they have streamlined and made their process so efficient and so simple to use that that ease of use appealed to the masses and was probably one of the biggest reasons that they were able to grow so quickly and become the behemoth that they are. I would have to think that would be something that would be difficult. And how do you guys take all this data this technologically driven data and make it easy for somebody who would be the way it was explained to me, like when I started doing videos, it's like you're speaking way over our head. You have to basically explain it like you're talking to somebody who's 8 years old. So you have to dumb it down from the ridiculously high level of information that you guys are computing and the algorithms and the numbers and everything, and cram that down so it's somebody can look at it and you give them the instructions, say, okay, if this is what you want to do, press this button. And it takes them right to what they need to do. And it's an illustration of that. And then follow this and your game, you will get to this next level. And then when you get there, we're going to provide you with the next step. That is, it's got to be something that just gets the mind working. Like you're constantly going into the person who is the novice and trying to look at it from their perspective, but you have to jump back into your position of the expert on all the technology and science behind it. That is a very, I would have to guess, difficult thing to do, but I have no doubt, given where you guys started and where you are now, that you're gonna solve that riddle.
Yeah, user experience is definitely a super important thing, and it's just removing all the things and distractions which create friction, and just really allowing the user to, get the right information at the right time, and removing all that extra stuff. Often it's the trick is not adding stuff sometimes, but just taking it away to, get exactly the right information that the player needs to perfect his swing.
Is there a lot of trial and error involved in that? A lot of alpha groups?
Yeah, definitely. It's just hypothesis about, we have a feedback, we have a guess, and then we have the special user group that's testing it, and then we listen to to the feedback and which parts maybe need to be improved. And we have a great software development team that can, every week we are working on new features, releasing new features, experimenting with the design, making it so it's continuous improvement by just having hypotheses, testing them, and then seeing if it's improvement or not.
How do you guys as a company, as you grow? So usually when a company starts, the vision of what the company is and what it represents is held by everybody in the company. And I think that the challenge that a lot of companies get into, be they usually small, and as they grow, is what they are and what they're becoming seem to have a divergence. So have you guys gotten to that level yet where part of your focus has to be on how we maintain all the things that you talked about earlier as far as what the company represents, and not letting it have a divert onto a different path? Like maybe, I give you an example. I had Randy Soma was a Fortune 50 CEO. And he said one of the things he sees in corporate America, at least in this country, is the focus on stock prices and the unethical things that companies will do. For example, cutting mass number of employees to save or to show a bigger profit so that their stock price can go up. I'm not saying you guys are doing anything like that, but in the early stages, because you guys are what, less than 5 years old, I think.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
So you've had the success, and now you're starting to grow, and you're looking to grow more. Is there any thought given to how do we maintain what we are, and we are not going to diverge from this, no matter how difficult the road gets? And that might not be a golf related question, but just a curiosity question.
Yeah, definitely. Company culture is super important, and I think what you refer to, like they often called vanity metrics, like just let's say number of followers. And if you want to get the most number of followers on Instagram, then you just put some kind of flashy things or whatever attracts attention, but those are not actually your users, and you're not going to grow your company value that way. So it might look good, and that's a problem actually for a lot of startup companies, that you're playing just this popularity game initially, that you try to get something happening, and you might get defocused by maybe participating in some kind of just competition to win some kind of prize, but it's not actually, you're not moving closer to what's referred to as product market fit, that your product is actually solving a problem for people. And if you don't listen to what your users are saying or your potential users are saying, you just might get distracted by these other metrics, which in social media, of course, are visible up front, like just you have how many followers you have or something like that, how many likes you get, but that's not actually what creates value for the company and for the users.
Right. It gives a false sense of security, maybe, and that you think you're doing
Yeah,
better than you actually are. It's like, well, let's focus on the important things, and the
yeah,
other things will come.
and they spend money maybe boosting your posts to get more likes, but if you don't have content that people want to watch and spend time on, then it's usual. You can't buy attention that way, really.
Not anything lasting.
Yeah.
We touched on, you guys have part of the company is in other sports outside of golf. Can you speak to that a little bit?
So we immediately got a lot of interest from other sports. And number one was baseball. We spoken to several MLB teams, and some are starting to use the sensor as well. And definitely a lot of baseball teams are looking at what are golf, what's happening in the golf industry. And because golf industry is probably, I would guess, the almost most technologically advanced. And I think that it's just explained by, it's you hitting the ball from a static position, and there's you can't really say that it's athletic ability that completely decides it, the result, because like in basketball it's very easy to say, like, I'm not Michael Jordan, I'm not gonna dunk it that way. But it's very hard for me to say, like, why, if I'm a fit guy, I couldn't do like a drive of 300 yards, right? It's completely physically possible while standing there. If I'm hitting a big slice, it's not really my athletic ability, it's my technique, and I can work on it. And there are certain patterns that the best players are doing, and if I learn it, then I can learn to do that. And that's why I think there's so much growth in technology, because there's this mystique and this what are the good players doing, and trying to measure it better and better, right? With video and with then with sensors, just seeing what exactly the good players are doing. And you don't maybe have that much initially that in, let's say, NBA, because you just know, like, Michael Jordan is much fitter than you, much taller than you, and he's a freak of nature. So, well, of course, you're not as good as him. And so that's why golf is so advanced technologically, because it's just you, the ball, and if you can't hit it, then it's a problem of your technique, most likely. And but other coaches, like in baseball, are looking at what golf is doing and learning. They're using more and more launch monitors, also not just major league teams, and then they're really interested in what the hands and the wrists are doing, and exactly how to control the bat. So that's one industry that we already entered, and we're offering it to baseball coaches. And then of course other coaches from NBA teams were approaching to us, and for basketball, so what's the shooting motion and what the wrist is doing there. Tennis coaches, there's some bowling coaches, that a lot of these sports actually have this wrist and hand motion that you need to learn. And we've got a lot of interest there, but we're trying to be very focused on golf at the moment, because we see that there's so much still to do. So we are talking to coaches in those other sports. In baseball, we already have a sport, but our strategy is not to immediately release a product for each sport that might want it. We gonna do as much as we can in golf, grow it as much as we can there, and then do in parallel, start doing it in parallel in other sports, because you don't want to stretch your attention too much as well.
Yeah, that kind of gets to along the lines of what I was referring to earlier, in that you start off with one thing, and then as you grow, you slowly start diverting in other directions, and pretty soon the company as a whole has lost its way, because you're scattered out. You can only take, and I would have to assume, I don't run a company. I mean, the podcast, for example, it's myself and there's an editor, and that's really about it, right? So I keep it. I'm production. I'm the vice president. I'm the grunt labor. I do all those things. So if anything's wrong, I can yell at myself. So I don't have to deal with employees. But I have to imagine that for getting people who are very, very good like yourself and other employees in your company, or else you wouldn't have gotten to where you are. The challenge has to be, how do you keep those people from drifting to other technological companies, be they inside of golf or even outside of golf, to where they're trying to pull them away from you because they're good at what they do. So yeah, that I'm glad you guys are working through those things and staying to your roots. And I hope it continues, and then that you guys are the ones who are pulling people from technological companies into your company.
For sure.
It's interesting how you bring it up in baseball. That there's a gentleman, he's a hitting coach. I think he consults with the Atlanta Braves. We're just trying to work out schedules for him to come on, and I'll bring it up to him, and I'll get you guys connected if that's okay. I know he has an academy just outside of Atlanta, or a coaching base where he does a lot with hitting, to getting players how to get extra power and things like that. And I'm sure that he could benefit from some of the work that you guys are doing. And he's supposed to be a genius with it. He's under 30. I think he's 29 years old. And a lot of people connect that said, you got to talk to this guy. And so we did connect. And if I can do that for you guys, whether it works or not, at least it'd be somebody to talk to who's just a nerd when it comes to the mechanics and all those things as it relates to hitting.
Sounds great. That would be awesome.
Why is there any particular reason, because you're in that industry, that you think that the technology and the advancements in it really seem to start in the golf world and then gravitate or go to other sports, where they're not really starting in other sports and then coming into golf? Is there any particular reason? This from somebody who's inside of that section of the
Well, as I said, I think it's really that golf it's very clear that it's about not just athletic. It's, of course, is athletic ability as well, but it's like a lot of the great players, or they're not that much, or in the older days, they weren't that much fitter than other guys. And like very fit guys are not necessarily very good, right? And it's very clear that it is down to your technique of how your swing, and then I think also the lessons are maybe it's just you and the ball, so you want continuous feedback. Like when you are playing maybe other sports, it's much more motion and maybe could be even more fun, like when you're playing soccer, or
kind of more reactionary.
Yeah, exactly. So like golf lessons, you're standing, your coach, and you're hitting, and then it's like, what happened? What did I do? What do I change? And it's very easy then if you couple that with, it's clear that it's not that, you can do it, it's just you're not doing the right thing. And then, okay, what should I be doing? Can you show me? And then you start filming it. And of course, it helps very much that golf lessons are also paid. Coaches are paid better probably than other coaches. So the lesson value is also obviously higher. And then you have resources to invest in your lessons to be different from other coaches, to offer better service. And it just makes sense to invest in yourself and your technology because you can earn it back. And maybe in other sports where lessons are less paid or some other reasons, then coaches have less incentive to really invest in it.
And I bring it up because I had a coach, Gil Bosch. He is a coach in GOTA. It's a training system that stands for Greatest of All Time Athletes. And as we were talking and learned more about how he came into that, I mean, he had back issues and was told he would never play golf again, and he'd be lucky if he could walk. And he went and did some physical therapy certifications and learned a lot about that. He's very successful and smart entrepreneur. But what he said really kicked it off was when because he's a golf fanatic, he took the V1 system and the 4K resolution, which really allowed him to slow down athletic movement and performance and motor patterns, and really started seeing some similarities in some of the greatest athletes that have walked on the planet, from Pele to Roger Federer to Tom Brady and Michael Jordan, Serena Williams. And he started noticing certain patterns in there, and it really helped him develop his system. And they're making some big stride just the same way you guys are. So it's cool to see golf contributing to the rest of the world for the betterment of everybody.
For sure.
A lot of things, especially in the technological world, seem the new advancements seem to come from the periphery. So is there anything that you see that you might have a theory on that's going to be the next great thing that might just be lurking out there? Because it seems to be that when people focus on what they're developing at any particular given time, that there's something out there lurking that they just lose sight of, that they don't pay attention to. They're so involved in what they're doing. Is there anything that you see, or maybe you don't want to say because you've got it, you're keeping back pocket, you guys are going to release it, but what do you see as being the next big thing, be it for you guys or just in general?
I would say probably really good feedback on what exactly you, let's say, more engaging lessons. Like I think a lot of wearables and sports wearables, they can tell you, they deliver some type of data, but they don't give you actionable advice on what to do and then challenge you to do that. So let's say you get so basically in golf swing you get feedback and you get data, but the next step is of course tell me, okay, suggest me something to do and then challenge me maybe to do it, and then from lesson to lesson, like get better on that, kind of as a challenge mode, and that will really work on engagement, and that's actually something we are working on ourselves to implement. So I find it myself super valuable in lessons. That's exactly how I train. When I train with my friend, let's say, and then he makes a shot and then he challenges you to do that, or you're keeping a score, like you go to a gym, like you did 20 push-ups, can you do 25, can you do 30? And that's exactly like this kind of a game, but not like sometimes there are these fake badges that you can sometimes just gather, and it's not really these game mechanics. But when you add really cool way to do it that is really engaging, then it's even next level to getting the data, getting what is the correct pattern, and then having this engagement to just continuously improve, like replicating what people are doing in those great situations when they're challenging themselves. Like you look at the top athletes, they get into this kind of zone themselves. I think they often say that they don't leave the gym for hours just working on certain things and perfecting their, like in NBA players, just the shooting stroke, and they're obsessed with it. But they are, I think, obsessed with it in their mind. They create this perfect game which is kind of driving them. And like I think a lot of average people, they just, especially nowadays with so much distraction around it on your maybe there's so many distractors that you can't get this clear mind and get this focus on the goal and like every next step. That's hard to do it yourself sometimes, and if the system can get you into that mindset of just in the zone, correct, then it just super much helps for your improvement. I just find it myself when I was most progressing in my golf game, I was just like every lesson you're in the zone and just getting better, and you're just there's this continuous loop of you have your competition on the weekend, you need what you need to work on, you kind of play, you find what didn't work, what worked, you immediately improve it, you have your friends that you're competing against, and then just the progress is so fast compared to when
and I think that starts as kids, where you usually see, and I was lucky enough to have the International Junior Golf Academy less than a mile from my house. My brother worked there, so I would see these kids all the time, and in their free time they would go off with their friends, usually in a group of a couple of them, and they would challenge each other to hit these ridiculous shots, right? Like there was one where they went behind a tree, and it required them to hit like this 40 to 50 yard slice around the tree and onto the green, or they would pick the most ridiculous spot to hit a flop shot from, and so you could get closer to the hole. I think that's kind of where that starts. It's just kids being curious and challenging themselves. And then, as you alluded to, okay, then it starts to progress to, okay, what do I need to do as I want to develop and get to that next level? What do I need to improve on? And then let me go work on that, because that's going to help me have a better result in the next tournament. And it just snowballs from there to, as you mentioned, that the pros want to have that idea of the perfect game in their head. And it's like when they go to the gym for hours, or they go to the golf course for hours, they just get lost in what they're doing. And they're learning ways to solve problems, right? Whatever the problem is, if it's a mechanical issue, if it's a wrist issue, feet, whatever it is, that they're learning how to do that. And then when the game time comes, I mean, is it any coincidence that some of the best quarterbacks of all time, you got Tom Brady, who had one of the worst combine scores in history, and he went in the 8th round. You have Steve Young, who sat in college behind Jim McMahon for 3 years, and then he got to be the starter, and then he goes to San Francisco and he has to sit behind Joe Montana, but he kept working and working and working and improving. And these people who overcome these challenges and solve these problems, they do it for so long that by the time they get to the spotlight, they're so well groomed in it. Obviously, Tiger in the golfing world was second to none. It didn't matter how accomplished he was. He kept going back to that. Okay, it's 2022 season starting next month. I'm starting from zero again. Doesn't matter that I won 14 or 15 majors. Now I got to start from zero. And that ability to mentally say, this doesn't matter anymore. I'm starting from ground, the same level everybody else is. I see exactly what you're saying. I don't think it's become anywhere near mainstream, but I think it damn well should be. I think that there's a few people talking about it. Right. Go ahead.
No, if you can build any kind of system that helps you to get into that zone and stimulates you, not just towards setting those goals and getting in the right mindset, then it's just can be so helpful. And unfortunately, not everybody has it naturally, but if you can, steer people in the right direction, and we're trying to do that with our product, getting to that point, then the progress can be huge for anybody.
Let me ask you, it's time's kind of winding down for us. You guys you offer multiple products, right? There's the light version, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then there's the advanced version. Can you speak to those so people, when they go to your website, they have a better understanding in their own mind of what they might want to learn more about and purchase from you guys, or at least get with somebody who has access to your device?
So the hardware is the same, and the difference is in the software and what type of data you get access to. And what we call the full system, that version has all the graphs which show detailed motion at 100 hertz, so each moment of the swing, and it has extended tour player library, and so it has basically more data and more detailed data. And then the light version is more toward, the goal is for more players to buy it and use it, and that's giving you the main positions. So, and the main metrics, but they don't give it the metrics at such granularity, and there's less tour data examples. So one is kind of the more pro version, the full system, and the other is more aimed at players.
So the player, I mean, the full version would be, let's say, for gravitate towards coaches, and the light version, I think you guys call it on the website, it would be more for if Joe Smith at a XYZ club wanted to go from a 10 handicap down to a single digit handicap, he would be able to utilize that on his own.
Yeah, and you can always upgrade. So you start with less data, you can understand that data, and then upgrade if you feel that I'm really enjoying this, I want to upgrade to the full version, and then you get access to more detailed data. Because basically the coaches, they just want to often see all the details, and their while players maybe don't have that much time, so they say, okay, I'm fine with just seeing these main metrics at these main positions, and that's enough for me to improve. And I'm not going to do that much just sitting down and doing in-depth analysis.
Yeah, I know Jason Sutton is one of the coaches on your side. And Jason was on the show, and he works at Carlton River, which is about 4 miles from my house. I'm going to bug the hell out of him to go play with his hack motions, see what kind of data I've got all messed up. See if he can help me with that.
Yeah.
You want to jump into some rapid fire and get you on your way? I know you're getting probably close to supper time, and I'm getting close to lunchtime. I don't want to invade, and but I still want to knock out a couple more things. So if you're cool with it, I do an emergency 9. I call it. It's rapid fire.
Sure.
Always do it with all the guests. So with the as we alluded to earlier, the Ryder Cup's coming up in a few weeks. If you were to make the Ryder Cup team, and they have that walk-up song now to the first tee box, and especially this year at Whistling Straits, I don't know if you've seen the pictures yet of the grandstands, but I mean, they're going to have something like 15,000 people surrounding the first tee. You know they're going to be packed and full of people, maybe slightly intoxicated. But if you were to your walk-up song, what would be your walk-up song to in the Ryder Cup?
It's tough. I think it would be my Stairway to Heaven, probably.
All right, cool. That's a cool song. If you were to go in a casino, what would be your go-to game of choice?
Honestly, I'm not a big fan of casinos, so I can't answer that.
Okay, no problem. When you're playing golf, what's your go-to drink?
Water, just pure water.
No getting dehydrated, eh?
No.
If you could buy stock in any golfer over the next 5 years, who would it be?
I think John Rahm.
He's trending pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah.
Let's see. Caddyshack, Tin Cup, or Happy Gilmore?
Probably Caddyshack. I really like Bill Murray.
The classic.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple more. Best course you ever played?
I think it was probably Royal Adelaide in Australia. That was great in the World Team Championship. That was a great course.
Mm-hmm. Since you're a tech guy, if you could play any video game for the rest of your life, what would it be?
That's tough, actually. I think I grew up playing Need for Speed, so I would play a racing game, yeah, like that.
All right, cool. Most used app on your phone?
Unfortunately, my email. Well, actually, no. Time-wise, it would be podcasting now. So, yeah, my podcast app.
Cool. You would think that would be I probably need to have a podcast app. I do listen to when I go to work out, and that's kind of how I stay current on who to.
Yeah, email has the most opens, but lengthwise, it would be podcasting.
Cool. And in your opinion, greatest golfer of all time?
Probably Tiger. Doing it at such competition and elevating the game. But Tiger.
It's a no lose answer on that one. I think Tiger's probably got a little bit of the edge. You're the 51st show, so you might have swung it 26 to 24, but I don't think there's a wrong answer in that one, especially when it comes down to Tiger and Jack. All right, yeah. Reinhold, hey, I'm greatly appreciative that you took the time to come on. It's been fun. I learned a whole bunch more about Hack Motion. I knew a little bit about it after, again, having Jason nearby and talking to Scott. And I look forward to getting on there and using it. And I hope more people who listen to this will take that opportunity to do the same. And I know you guys, given the way you run your company and come up with products and the whole culture, I know it's going to continue to be very, very successful and help people improve their games in so many ways.
Yeah, it's great coming on the podcast and just happy to be here. So thanks a lot for inviting.
Awesome. Well, you have a great night, and I'll be in touch soon. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up again on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.